EMP Series, Day 172, Part 1. Captain Edwin Nunez walked along the dirt road, down toward the valley and the town. It was early, and the sun was just starting to come up over the horizon. He'd walked for miles from where Congressman Holmes's convoy had left him. He was tired, just wanted to get to the diner for a cup of coffee. He also wanted to meet with his friend, Carl Fairley. He had to be cautious not to let anyone see them together. He could not jeopardize the operational security of his mission. He also needed to meet his deadline for his daily check-in with his Section 7 security detail, as well as his check-in with the command unit back in the sub-basement of the abandoned bike shop in Northern Virginia. He knew all these layers of security protocols were essential for the security of his entire unit, but right now he felt them to be a huge burden. He glanced down at his watch. Yes, he thought, there's time for a coffee first. Carl and Frank walked out of their office and onto the platform. Carl was showing Frank around on his first official day as deputy. Frank was bright and seemed to catch on to things quickly. Carl was glad to have him on board. It was clear to Carl from the briefings he had with Frank the night before that he would be a huge asset to him. Carl even envisioned himself being able to spend more of his time with his family now that he had someone so capable on staff. Carl had hired Frank to be a blessing to him and his family, but as it was turning out, Frank was shaping up to be a blessing to Carl as well. Captain Nunez walked around the corner on the main road leading into town. It was still early. The town was quiet. As he walked up the steps onto the train platform, he saw Carl across the way. He was with someone that Nunez had never seen before. He appeared to be Carl's deputy, he thought. As he looked Frank over, he quickly dismissed him in his mind. He knew one of Carl's deputies was killed by Lee when he walked in on him killing Hammer. He just figured this man was his replacement. Didn't think much more about it. Carl saw Nunez as well, but he pretended not to. Nunez walked into the trading post and out of sight. Nunez and Carl had a communication system in place. It was basic and rudimentary, but it worked well. When one wanted to meet with the other, he would place a sealed note on the bulletin board in the trading post. It was addressed to someone who did not exist. Names that both men had committed to memory. Nunez placed his note on the board and checked to see that there was none from Carl waiting for him. He knew Carl saw him go in and would check when he could. Each man checked the board every other morning, so they usually requested meetings a couple days out from when they posted the note. However, in this case, Nunez wanted a quicker meeting, and so he made sure Carl saw him go in, and he tipped his cap rim as he walked out, a signal to Carl that a message was posted. Now he would get his coffee and make his daily check-ins and just go back to his camp and get some rest before going to the requested rendezvous to meet Carl. Frank looked over at the trading post and took notice of Nunez. "Sheriff," he alerted Carl, "that guy over there coming out of the trading post? That's the guy I saw double-timing up the trail away from the burning truck the other night." Carl looked over at his friend, Captain Edwin Nunez. "Are you sure that's the man?" Carl asked. "Well, I'm sure," responded Frank. He passed within feet of where I was hiding. Oh, it's definitely him, Sheriff. Carl was a little shocked, and his mind went in several different directions at once. What was going on here, he wondered. What did Nunez have to do with all this? With Lee? Why would he kill him? Whose orders was he acting upon? Frank broke his thought when he asked, "Should we pick him up and question him?" Carl immediately answered, "No, I'm going to follow him and see where he goes. You stay here and man the office. I'll be back as soon as I can." With that, Carl jogged over to the trading post, retrieved the note from Nunez off the bulletin board. He stuffed it in his pocket and set out, following his trail. He wasn't worried about losing him. He knew exactly where and when he could find his friend. As he followed Nunez up to the hills, he kept his distance. He struggled to figure out how his friend figured into all this. Every possible scenario he came up with led to a conclusion that was not good. This threw Carl, and it was obvious to him that it distracted him when Nunez jumped out of the underbrush and pushed Carl off his horse. Nunez reached out a hand to help him up and said, "Brother, what's going on? You following me? You know better than that. And speaking of better than that, how on earth did you let me get the drop on you like that? You're getting old, bro." Carl took his friend's hand and accepted the tug up to his feet. "Yeah, guess so. Just kind of daydreaming," he said. "What the heck did you knock me off my horse for?" he asked. "I'm just messing with you, bro. Still haven't told me why you're following me." "Well," Carl said, "I got your note and it seemed important. I can't meet with you when you requested, so I figured I'd come up to your camp." "Well, what's up anyway? Everything okay with you?" Carl had held out hope that Nunez was forced to kill Lee for some legitimate reason, that he would explain it all to him and it would make sense, that everything between them would be okay. "Yeah, everything's fine," reported Nunez. "Just routine stuff, you know. We haven't talked in a while and I just wanted to make contact. Nothing urgent. Sorry you followed me all the way out here, and sorry I knocked you down. I never really thought you would let me get that close." Nunez still had not decided how much of what he knew about Stillman to reveal to Carl. He meant to brief him on their meeting, but still hadn't had time to prepare. Now he was even more unsure. He could sense something was off with his friend. The two men made a fire and put some water on the boil. They would make some soup from some dehydrated veggies and seasonings Carl had in his saddlebags. They would have their meeting there and then part ways. There was now no need for Carl to ride all the way up to Nunez's camp. Sitting there across the fire from each other, Carl looked over at his friend. "Cap," he said, "did you kill my prisoner the other night?" Nunez was caught off guard with that. "What? Where'd that come from?" "Well, I mean, he went missing right after you left that night, and you burned the truck and fled on foot. What was that about?" "I have to admit, I wouldn't have suspected you. The murder itself was a little sloppy. Not your usual work at all. But then again, if you wanted to avoid suspicion, I guess that was the point, wasn't it? I just can't figure out why. To what end? Who ordered it, Cap?" Nunez sat silent for a moment before responding. "Carl, there's things here at play that you don't know about, that you can't know about. He looked up and into his friend's eyes. Just trust me on this one, bro. You need to forget what you think you know about it. Just forget it. Please. I need to know you're hearing me on this. I need to know you can let this go. How, Cap? How can I just let this go? Carl, it's simple, man. Just forget about it. We compartmentalize details all the time. You know how this game is played. We never know the whole story. This is no different. Carl looked at Nunez. This is different, Cap. We don't keep secrets from one another. At least I didn't think we did. I don't. In this business, trust is almost impossible to find. It's our most valuable capital. I trusted you. I can't just put this little nugget of info in a room in my mind and forget about it. You know me. You know I can't do that. And just move on together like nothing happened. It will just be like it is with everyone else. Every time you tell me something, I'll wonder if it's true or if it's complete. I can't do it, Cap. Well, said Nunez, I'm sorry to hear that, Carl. Real sorry. He rose to his feet and drew his .45 from his belt. He pointed it at his friend and ordered him to take out his sidearm and toss it into the brush. He reached over and picked up Carl's rifle as well. He dropped the mag out and ejected the round from the chamber, set the rifle down away from Carl. Nunez knew at that point he had to kill his friend. With every fiber of his being, he did not want to do it, but he knew he had to. He ordered Carl down on his knees and told him to place his hands behind his head and interlock his fingers. Carl knew the drill. He made a last attempt to reason with his friend. You don't have to do this, Cap. Yes, Carl, I do. I wish I didn't, but I do. I think I knew you couldn't just forget about what you think you know. I just hoped somehow, some way that you could. I'm sorry, brother. You don't know how hard this is for me. Carl looked up at Nunez. There were tears streaking down his face. He walked back and forth, trying to summon the courage to do what needed to be done. Then he stopped and again said, I'm sorry, brother. Forgive me. He raised his .45 to the side of Carl's head. Carl started to say something, barely audible at first. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As he started to repeat it, Nunez smashed the butt of the .45 against his friend's head, knocking him over, bloodied, to the ground. Shut up, he demanded. Nunez stepped forward towards Carl and again raised the .45. and pointed it down at him as he lay bleeding in the dirt. He cocked the hammer back and released the safety. He extended his arm out straight and rigid. He slid his finger inside the trigger guard, and with tears running down his face, he repeated, "I'm sorry, brother." The sound of the shot sent a flock of birds desperately into flight out of the tree from where they rested. It echoed throughout the valley. A good man lay dead in the dirt, blood pooling up around his lifeless body.